Hello lovely people, I'm K3 and welcome to Wonky Wednesday. Oh sorry, squeaky chair. In this video I'm going to make a little scrappy house. I've been thinking a lot about home lately because of stuff that's going on in my life. I don't often do figurative things, but yeah, I felt the need to make a house, so that's what we're going to do. Let's take my glasses off. So what you'll need is a foundation piece. This is a 6-inch square because it won't be going in my log cabin journal. And then I've got some scraps, various scraps. You see I've laid them out in a vaguely house-like shape. So I've got a piece for the roof. I've got a piece for the house itself. I've got some sky. I've got a little piece for a door. I've got a bit of black for a window. And then I've got some dark green for the sort of ground and some more for the sides, you know, the background. So just some scraps. You'll see as I go along what you might want to use where. So I'm going to start with the roof because we need to put a roof over our heads. It's the most important thing. So I've got this piece of greeny green on my square. I'm just going to sort of visualise where I want my house to be, kind of here. So I need a roof that's about this kind of size and shape. So we're wonky, so I'm just going to cut it wonky. I want to do it now. You could either do a pointy roof or you could do, you know, a roof like that. I've got the snippers because I need to cut. I think I'm going to do a roof like that. I'm just going to cut out a vaguely roof shape, very vaguely. And I'm going to do seams. You could just do it collage if you want. So I'm going to cut it slightly bigger than I think I need. Oh, it's just a bit of fluff. So I'm going to put that on there like that. And now I need to do the sky. Let me get some of this blue. And I'm just going to, I want to sort of fill in these angles that I've made. So I'm just going to lay that on like that. And imagine if I sew there and then flip that up. Will that fill in? I want it to fill in all the space above the roof. Is it big enough? Yes it is. So let's get some thread in the needle. I'm just going to use this regular piecing cotton. Sorry, should have pre-threaded. There we go. And might be an idea to put a pin in that as well, Catherine. So I'm just going to pin that on there like that. So just, you know, audition your scrap. I'm leaving it big like that. I'll trim it off in a minute. And I'm going to put a couple of pins where I'm going to stitch, which is going to be, you know, along there somewhere. That vague 1/4 inch that I always talk about. Not in my thread. Excuse me. I'm sorry. It's because you're the first people I talk to in the morning and my voice isn't warmed up yet. Sorry for my arm. I'm taking some tea. I slept a bit. Apologies. So I'm going to just make sure I only sew where the roof is. I don't want to stitch this down because I'll probably trim some of that away. So I'm just going to go in about where the roof starts. And just stitch along there, just with a little running stitch. Pin out. And I'm doing a house, but you could apply this technique to any kind of shape you liked, really. You can do a little landscape or, you know, anything you can think of. So it's kind of, oh gosh, I'm really sorry. It's kind of what's known as paper piecing, only we're piecing onto a background cloth, and if you've done regular paper piecing you have the shapes already printed onto your bit of paper and then you fill in with the cloth. And that's usually done on a sewing machine with the stitches close together so you can rip the paper away. So it's kind of based on that principle. That's to the end of my roof, cut that off. Knock my thread ready for next time. So now I'm going to flip that up, press that seam down, and I'm going to put a pin or two just to hold it in place. So I'm pinning only where the foundation cloth is underneath, which I can feel with my fingers, with my painty fingers. Turn it over, make sure it's all smooth. The roof's got wrinkled, that's okay. And I'm going to trim it back. Bigger scissors would have been handy, but I don't have any here that are sharp. Just in line with the foundation. There we go. And then I'm going to do the same thing the other side of the roof. I'm going to get those angles sorted out first. I probably will do some more trimming in a minute, but for now that'll do, pig. Can I use one of these angles to my advantage? I don't think, no, it's not big enough. Do you see that's way too small? I'll just go up this other end and do it like that. No, see, I want it to come down like this. Am I in shot? Do you see? I want it because I'm going to trim it off in line with the roof in a minute. So if I put it there, there'll be a gap. So I need to make sure I put it low enough down, like that, so that there's enough. And just play about until you get there. I think about there will do, so I've overlapped by that enough. Now I've gone to, Catherine, just do a big overlap. Just do a big overlap and trim it off. We don't mind scraps, do we? Because we'll always use them. And so I'm just going to do the same thing again, only where the roof is, because I don't want to stitch that down, like I said. Not bothering with back stitches or anything. Whoops. Don't do that to me, please. Just to the end of the roof. Really wonky stitches, never mind, it'll do, pig. It'll be fine. So as I've said already here and there, I'm filming this in advance because when you see this I'll be in France packing up my stuff and getting ready to bring it back here. Right, that's that. Same thing again, flip it up. I might keep a pin in that one, just stop it flopping about. And just make sure you've got the seam. Do you see how it wants to go skew-if? You can just push against the seam with your fingers, make sure it's in the right place. And let's pin that in place. And same thing again. Turn it over and trim it back. Of course, if you had all the rotary cutter type things, that would be much easier. I'm a bit all fingers and thumbs. My hands are giving me a bit of trouble because of all the painting I've been doing. Gripping the roller and the paintbrush. And I'll recover. I'm nearly done. Well, I will be done by the time you see this, I hope. Hopefully today will be the last day of painting. Right, there we go. So now I want to trim that because I think I'm going to put a straight piece all the way across there. Hopefully I've still got enough of that, just. So I'm going to trim, first of all I'm going to just trim it in line here with the bottom of the roof. And now I'm going to trim. I'm going to trim this back. I'm sorry if my hands are in the way. I'm just going to trim that back. You could also stitch your other piece on first and trim it off afterwards. And I'm going to trim that back. Here comes a little motorbike. There we go. And now I want to just stitch one long piece along the top there. So I'm just going to stitch that like that, I think. Is that going to be long enough, wide enough? Just. I think I'm going to tear that, just so it's less flippy floppy tearing. When you lay onto audition, just do make sure, I do always lay it on right sides together and flip, because the laying on and flipping can, you know, if you just lay it on, it might turn out that you don't have enough. So just be aware of that. I think that's enough. So now I'm going to sew all the way along there. Not really bothering if my seam is not even, because it doesn't matter. Where's my needle? I did not make a knot. You don't have to make knots, you can just be careful not to pull your tail through and do a little back stitch to start. And just make sure everything underneath is where it should be. Come on, I'll go through. This blue cloth is from my friend, although it's fine. It's quite thick, not thick, you know, resistant. Quite a high thread count. And then what I thought I would do, well, when I've made this, when I've pieced all this together, is in, there's a spoiler alert coming up, in Monday's video, the video I'm going to make for next Monday for you, I'm going to embellish this, because next Monday's video the theme will be home. Many of you lovely kind people have said that if I want to skip a week or skip a video, whatever, because of what's going on in my life, then, you know, you would completely understand, but I can't do that. I mean, I could, of course I could, and I know you'd understand, but I just feel like I made a commitment to you at the beginning of the year, and as long as I can sit here and sew, then no excuses. But I thought maybe if I sort of combine this Wonky Wednesday with the following Monday, when you see this Wonky Wednesday, I'll be in France, and when you see Monday's video, I'll be in my new home. So I thought there's something fitting about spanning, you know, those two things. And I think also for me, probably tomorrow morning I'll make the following Monday's video and do some embellishing on this. It'll kind of help me imagine myself there already. So I hope that's okay with you all. So finger press that down, pin that just through to the foundation. So of course I'm aware that some of you don't watch both. Some only watch Wednesdays, some only watch Mondays, and obviously I will tell everybody that only watch Mondays that may not see this that if they want to make a wonky house, then this is the video where I'll show how to make it. But I'll also give other suggestions or guidance if you don't want to make an actual house following, you know, the theme of home. So yeah, I came up with that in the car driving back yesterday, so I was wondering what to do. I'm just trimming all that back as well. Shaky hands. Come on hands, behave yourself. Right. So there's my roof and my sky. So now I need to do my house. I'm not going to have much room for, I might have to come up a bit. Not going to have much room for a little foreground. So this is going to be my house. And I need some pieces at the side. So I'm going to piece this first, because otherwise you're going to have to do seams on an L shape. So I'm going to get some for my house. I think I want my house to be about that big. Tearing, sorry, I should have warned you. So my house will be about that big. And then I want some side pieces, which I thought I would make out of this. So I'm just going to tear a strip, I think, about so wide. Tearing. That tore much more easily. I think I'm going to use this wrong side up because it's quite a busy pattern. So I'm going to just stitch it to one end first. I want that side to be my right sides together. I'm just matching there and there. I'm not worrying about that for the moment. So, you know, you can do this. You can either just piece directly onto your foundation, or if you need to make slightly more complex shapes, you can stitch them together first and then piece them on. It's just kind of a nice way, kind of, you know, drawing with fabric, with cloth. Do you remember fuzzy felts? I just thought of fuzzy felts. It was a game, or it came in a box and you had a background that was cards. I think there were different ones that had a sort of slightly textured surface, and then you had little felt shapes that just stuck by static to the card, and so you could make pictures. It just reminded me of that. If they still make fuzzy felts, they probably now do it with an app. So I'm just going to cut that level with my house piece. And finger press that. You can finger press it whichever way you fancy. I'm going to do it to the outside. And I'm going to lay it on and see where I want my house to come. Do I want my roof to overhang a bit, or do I want it in line? I think I want it to overhang a bit, like that. So I need to sew here somewhere, my next one. So if I need to sew there, I need a seam allowance. So I'm going to cut slightly bigger. You can always then play with the seam allowance. I'm going to turn it on its side because it's easier. The house doesn't mind being turned on its side. So if that piece is going to be there, this piece will go there. See, that'll be fine, I think. Fine and wonky. So I'm just going to stitch that to that. This bit of thread's probably just enough. Right sides together again. You could, if you looked up either on the internet, or colouring books are quite good sources of simple pictures, or you know, folk art type images and just simplify it down into its component shapes and use that as inspiration and make it in this way. I think it's, I will need more thread in a minute. I think it's quite a nice way of making pictures with cloth, if you don't want to just do collage raw edge, you know, for a change. So just trim that level with the house again, finger press that, and now I need to sew this onto here, my little house. So I'm just seeing how high up I want it. Actually, I think once I stitch that there and fold that down, I've got plenty of foreground here. So I'm just going to go for it. Turn it the other way up, it's easier. Put some pins. Not worrying about the edges yet. Just making sure my house is where I want it. I've made a long thin house because I'll be living in a long thin house. If you wanted to do a more square house, of course you do you. Think about your own idea of maybe your own house literally, or you know, your own idea of the house. You can make lots and make them all different. A whole load of wonky houses. Right, I need some new thread. Yeah, I just remembered something I was going to do. What I was going to do is, not that yet, while this is in a piece, I want to cut a little hole, because my window I was going to do with a kind of reverse applique. So I think I'm going to have my door on the left and my window here. So I'm going to cut out a little square somewhere up there, a little square hole. So I'm going to fold it and make a snip. And I'm going to cut. Now I must remember that I need a seam allowance here, so I can't go too close to that. So that's not the edge. The edge will be about where my scissors are. Do you see? So I can't go too high, much higher than that. I'm just going to go up slightly. I could have done this afterwards, but then you'd have to be careful not to cut through the background and so on, so it's easier to do it now. It's a little bit thinking of the molar again that we did in the Monday project. There we go. So there's my little window. Now you could line the black up now and stitch it down. I'm trying to think which is easiest. Or poke it through afterwards. I think it's probably easier now to line it up, so I'm going to get myself some of this black. Does it tear? No. I just think it's linen. Very fine linen. It might be cotton. And get a piece that's a bit bigger than the hole it's going behind. Keep snipping at it until it's too small probably. That'll do, pig stop. Right, so that will go behind there. So I'm just going to, let me think. I'm going to hold it with the point of my scissors and do that. And then I know it's in the right place. And what I could do then is just baste that down. Just put a pin first so it stays in the right place. And I'll just baste that down around its very outer edge. Just so it stays put. And I don't need to worry about it anymore. A bit more thread. Don't run away, cotton reel. So just make sure that you're, you know, if you don't want these stitches to show, which I don't, that you go right to the edge of your little scrap. And they don't have to be super duper fine and neat stitches, they're just to hold it down. Just like that. You can make a whole street of little houses. Another motorbike. There we go. Snip. Pin out. I've got a little roof and a little window but no house. So, just making a knot. Let's bring the house back in. That's going to go there. Flip it up. Turn it round actually, otherwise my pins will be facing the wrong way and they'll be more likely to bite. Just make sure that when I flip it back it's still going to be, you know, the window's going to be in the right place. What you could do if you're unsure is put a few pins and then flip it and see. Like that. See, that's going to be fine. And I hope my seam allowance isn't going to show behind the window. Take a very small seam allowance. All these things you have to look out for. I should have probably done it even further down, but I didn't, so we have to go with it. Just make sure when you cut your window that you're at least a seam allowance plus that same distance again, plus a bit more for good measure. Hope that makes sense. So your seam allowance doesn't show in the back of your window. If it did, you could just say it was, you know, the top of a, what do they call those things? Pelmets that go above a curtain. I'm just going to sew the seam allowances down because it doesn't matter. And nearly there. Oh, I'm sorry if my head came in. I just felt the camera on the top of my head. So if you saw the top of my head, you can see if I've got any paint in my hair, which is very likely. I've had the end of my twist in the paint more than once. Could have used my twist as a paintbrush, couldn't I? Right. And there we go. So now, I'll just put a knot ready. We'll flip that down, hope that our window is in the right place. Yes, it is. Finger press on that. Now the door, I think I'm just going to put it on raw edge applique. So I'm first going to put a strip across the bottom, and I've got this greeny colour. I think I want it from this end. Greeny colour. So I'm gonna, it's quite a big bit, so I'm going to trim it first, I think, just to make it a bit more manageable. And I'm gonna put it right sides together. I don't need to audition, I can see that it's going to be, actually I don't need to do that because this is going to be trimmed. Let's trim that first. Just trim those two ends off first. It's quite, I don't like trimming against my green mat in case I cut it. There we go. Right, so put it that way up because it's easier. So make sure that's really pressed down. You could put pins down here if you wanted to hold it. So now I can put that right sides together. I can line it up with one edge because it's just a straight piece. And I'll trim the other edge afterwards. Put some pins and stitch that whole seam across. So if you're not a Monday person and you don't want to watch Monday's video but you do want to make a little house, then once it's all pieced together you can do all kinds of lovely slow stitching on it. I'm sure I don't need to show you or tell you how to do that by now, but I'm thinking of maybe doing some stitching on the roof to represent roof tiles, you know, or maybe just running stitches or back stitches. Could do some, I thought of doing some feather stitch with the little French knots around the door to represent roses growing around the door. You could, you know, do a little French knot for a doorknob, things like that. You could stitch around the window, a little window frame, windowsill. You could put some flowers in the garden in the front. You could stitch a little fence either side. It's just what's popping into my head, but I'm sure you'll have plenty of ideas of your own. Really go to town on your little house. Make a chimney for it. If you wanted it to have a chimney, you could do that in the same way that I'm going to do the door, or you could just do it with stitching, a satin stitch or something. You could add beads and, you know, things like that. You could make little beady flowers in your garden. I have no clue what I'm going to do for the Monday video. Probably some of that, possibly not all of it. That's the end of that. So there's my foreground. I'm going to put a couple of pins. So it stays put while I trim it. I wonder if it would go horribly wrong if I tried to tear that while it's stitched on there. Yes, it probably will. I won't. I don't dare. I'll just cut it with the snippy snippies. There we go. There we have it. So then well, you could do a number of things. You could just do some running stitch around the edge. Like I say, you could do that in black or a dark colour even to represent a frame, or if you wanted to get some very fine cotton, the colour of your house, you could overcast that edge down first. You know, like when you're doing a plique. You know what I mean, the little whip stitch. But anyway, so that is my wonky house for Wonky Wednesday. So I hope you enjoyed that, and like I said, if you're not a Monday video person, you can make that and then you can have all kinds of fun embellishing it. And if you are a Monday video person, you'll see this in my Monday video and I'll do some stitching on it. And meanwhile, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much again for all your support. It means so much to me, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Bye bye.